Hey, hi. In this video, we will see what is GitHub and GitHub Actions, and also we will have a demo of what is, the GitHub is and how the GitHub Actions are used by the developers. So here first we will see what is GitHub. So as you see, this is the GitHub logo. Basically, GitHub is a platform for version control and collaborations. What does that mean? Is a team of developer who is working on an application or a particular services, they can do their piece of work and try to commit to the upstream repository, and that's what it is actually called as a platform. In the sense, a team can collaboratively deliver their piece of work and finally reach their destination of a source code for an applications. And that is what this platform is providing, a collaborative platform with a version control capabilities. The next one is the GitHub is built on Git, which is a open source version control system. And then it's basically a GitHub provides you a hosted repository for code management and teamwork. That's what I have explained earlier. Now let's go ahead and try to see why you need a GitHub now, right? So the GitHub, as we know, that it's a version control tool, and it is help the team to maintain the source code in a version control manner where all the team can collaborate. So that's the reason you need a GitHub where you have a team that needs to collaborate on a code development with the team members. Okay, that's the reason the GitHub is needed. And GitHub also enables you to track and manage the changes in your project. So basically, developing code development is a continuous activity, and then the process of code development is happens day by day. So in the case, the developer who is worked on a piece of code today, it has to be saved somewhere, and then he has to continue from the point of time where he has stopped it. That's the reason this is the system which is needed for track and manage the changes on your project. The next one is it provides you a capability of it actually has the capability to integrate with the IDE tool like VSCode and CI/CD pipeline. So GitHub is not only just providing the storage of storing your code files, but also it has the capability to integrate with the other tools like IDE, which is used by the developer, CI/CD pipeline, which is used for continuous integration and continuous deployment purpose. So as you see in the left hand side, that's how the process is going ahead. That is, you have a source code where the GitHub push is used. You will do a build with using the CI/CD definition. You do a testing during the build or deployment, and then finally you deploy to the environment, right? And then explore and contribute to the millions of open source projects. Of course, the GitHub is not only for enterprise application development or enterprise service development. It is wide open project, and it can be allowed to a millions of people to explore and contribute on the work. Next one, we will see certain key concept for the GitHub. So this is a tutorial, that is a GitHub tutorial, right? So I would like my viewers to know what is the basic concepts of GitHub. Then only it will help you to start using this open source utility. So first one, in the GitHub, you would really use these keywords when you work on the GitHub. The one is repository, or in short form, they call it as a repo. So repo is basically a project folder in the GitHub. Okay, so you can call it as a root container in which you're going to keep the files of your source code, or folders and files of your source code. That is what the repository at a layman term. What is commit? Commit is basically you made some code and you need to save it. So when you edit a file in your computer, right, you're gonna do a save, and that is where it is actually saved in your local laptop. Now, and that's the activity in the GitHub terminology called as a commit. In the sense, you save your changes in your project. And the word commit is been occurring because here you are not only working on that file, there are a lot of people might be working on that same file or the same folder, or they the same project, like that. Then the branch is, again, I can call it as a logical the segregation of the source code within the repository, right? It's basically called as a separate version of your code experimentation. You can call it as the branches as nothing but branches could be a copy of your source code. One is acting as a fair, and the other one is acting as a rough, right? So I'm using very layman term. That's the reason, that's where the branch comes in picture. We will see what are all those branches in the real time demo. Then the pull request. So pull request is a proposal to merge the changes into the main code. So as I said, you are working on a one branch, and that is your development branch, or you can call it as a rough branch or feature branch, where you made some code and you have tested it, it works good. Now you want to carry out that code to a higher level, where you want to make that code integrated in a main stable code branch, and that's where the pull request concept comes in picture. And then an issue. So issue is another concept that you're going to use it in a GitHub, that is used to track the bugs and the features request on your source code or on your project. Then the fork is the another concept, that is basically copying someone else's repository, which is basically taking a mirror of somebody else's repository and using. That's where the fork concept comes in picture. So let's go to the next concept, that is introduction to the GitHub Actions. So this video is to enable you to understand what is GitHub, how to use it, then also the integrated tool, that is GitHub Actions, which is used for CSD purpose. That's where we want to introduce to the GitHub Actions. So this is how the logo of GitHub Actions look like. Now, what is actually the GitHub Actions? GitHub Action is a tool for automating the workflows directly in the GitHub Actions. So now you think that your team of a developer who is working on a source code, they are working continuously, right? So just developing a source code is not enough for application to run. There are a lot of steps that has to be carried out once the source code of application is written, and that is where the GitHub Action is coming picture and enabling you to automate that task. Consider you are written .py file, and in that py file you are written print and then print hello world. Let's say that is just an example. Now writing that file is not makes it executable. So how do you execute? It has to be invoked, right? So that invocation is nothing but an action, and that is where that kind of invocation can be automated with using the the GitHub Actions. So basically it's a tool to automate your workflow directly in the GitHub Actions. I have given you very layman term example of how you can use the GitHub Actions, but GitHub Actions is meant to do a lot of things. That is basically it is enables you to build your source code, and then also enables you to deploy your source code into the hosting environment. It could be cloud, it could be on premises, right? And then it's, as I said, it is used for continuous integration and continuous deployment purpose. Why you should use the GitHub Actions? So basically, first of all, it's a native automation workflow tool, so it's recommended to use the GitHub Actions, right? And it has a capability to automate your testing, build and deployment, as I explained, and reduces the manual work in the development. So basically when you develop a code, you are actually, when you're developing application or a piece of feature in your application, you would be making the changes hundreds of times or thousands of times, and at every end of your try you want to do a testing. That is, you want to deploy it and look how does it looks, or check how does it works. Okay, even you can do that activity with the automation as well, but that's where you cannot keep doing that activity manual, right? That's where you need some tool to automate that. That's where the GitHub Action is coming and helping you, right? Then it also enables you to work seamlessly with the GitHub repository. That's what we're gonna see. Now we will see how does the GitHub Actions works under the hood, right? So GitHub work, the functionality of, or basically to use the GitHub Action, it's very simple. Trust me, GitHub Action has produced a very the unique the way of using the GitHub Actions. It's very simple. You have a repository, you create a folder with a name like .github/workflow. So basically, you see that it's automated process defined with the folder structure. So you have a repository. In that repository, you create a folder name called .github. Then within that, you create a subfolder called workflow. Within that workflow, you need to write your YAML file. So GitHub Actions are being defined in a YAML file. So you see that in the right hand side. So that is an example of GitHub Actions YAML file. So this YAML file defines, or basically it's a declarative, the coding of how your GitHub action has to work in. So you see that in the right hand side, the GitHub action has a name called CI/CD pipeline. When this GitHub action has to be invoked, that's where the on comes in picture, right? And then so GitHub Actions is nothing but what? It is a job, and job has a steps. Steps is nothing but an activity that you do on a computer. So where you do on a build. Run on is nothing but in which GitHub Action runner machine it has to work in. So GitHub Action runner machine is nothing but, it's again a client. Basically it will be a client, or it will be a server on which you will run the steps that is defined below, right? So steps is nothing but a task, a piece of command that you are executing, as simple as that. So one is you are doing a checkout is nothing but you are cloning the repository. How we do it, I'm going to show you it in the next part of the demo. So which basically does the checkout. Then you see that set up the node.js. So these are all nothing but what, these are all post source code. You want to compile that, you want to zip that, and you want to deploy that. So these are all the activity belongs to that category. So you do a node, you do set up the node.js, then you install the dependencies, and then you do run the npm test. Okay, so these are all nothing but so you declare these the steps in a order that has to be executed, and that's how the GitHub action will take care of that execution automatically. That is where the GitHub actions works. So let's see in a detail, right? So as I explained, the developer will define the workflow underneath of this folder. Then the job is basically a set of the set of steps that is executed in the workflow, as I explained there. Then the steps is basically an individual task within a job, which is like running the test and deploying it. Then the runner, so runner is nothing but as I said, it is an executable, a machine that executes a workflow, and you got a control on that, right? How do you control it? It is controlled, it could be a self-hosted machine, or it could be the Microsoft hosted machine. So how that's how it actually comes down to, right? And the GitHub is now owned by Microsoft. That's the reason I said by hosted by Microsoft. Okay, now with that, let's go to the next topic, that is benefit of GitHub Actions. So of course, every tool, every software that we use in the software development lifecycle has its own benefits. So here you see that it comes with a benefit of automated build and test, which will saves the time of deployment, integrates with the third-party tools, easy to basically easy to set up and customize. That's all the benefit of the GitHub Actions. And on top of this one, it's basically help you to seamlessly enable the developers to do a testing of their code once they want to do a testing immediately. That's where the in the benefit of GitHub Actions comes in handy. Now let's go for the VSCode. Now we have checked the repository GitHub, we checked the GitHub Actions. Now let's go for the developer side. Now as I said, developer uses tools like VSCode. VSCode is an integrated development environment provided by Microsoft again, right? So with using the VSCode, you can do interactions with the GitHub, and you can code it, and you can use the UI based buttons to interact with the GitHub. So here with using the VSCode, you don't need to remember the traditional Git command, right? So here the tool itself is providing you button to execute those commands that is needed to manage the lifecycle of your source code. Let's see, so this is how the logo of VSCode looks like. No worries, I'm going to show you that as part of the demo just after this walkthrough. Now first one is you need your system, that is your laptop or the desktop, need to have installed with the VSCode, which is an open source utility that you can download and install according to your OS version. Then once it is installed, make sure that your VSCode is installed with the GitHub extension, and also make sure that your system is installed with the Git as well. Then the next activity is you have to clone that repository with using the VSCode. I'm going to show you this cloning activity, making the changes in your source code, then the staging the changes, then committing the messages, and then the syncing the changes. So I'm going to show you these in the VSCode after this last walkthrough. So here let's look at the git command. So basically even though when you go for an interview, so basically the interviewer will definitely ask you the commands. I don't know why he asked, because you already have the VSCode which is that, but still they do it. So for your interview sake or for your information, you need to know what does those command does. Under the hood, when you use a VSCode, under the hood, in the backend, they are still using the git command only. That is, git init is basically initializes the repository. Git clone is it will clone the repository. Then git add is basically stages the changes. Git commit is basically git commit -m messages which will commit the messages. So basically this is what we have seen the git commands. Now I'm going to take you to the VS Code, and we're going to see how we interact with the GitHub and GitHub Actions now. So before I show you the final command which I would like to show you is git push origin main. So basically now you see that in the previous slide, in the previous slide we have seen these many steps, right? So here we have seen that the GitHub jobs, that is the GitHub Actions runs. Okay, now we are actually in the VS Code, we have seen that clone it, stage it, change it, commit. So So basically these are all activity that you see, that clone, change, stage and commit. Now that activity, if you convert it into GitHub command, so this is how the GitHub command looks like. That is git init, clone, add, commit, push. Okay. Now we will see that in a now. So as you see here, I am in my GitHub account. So this is my GitHub account I have created for this demo. You see that I use GitHub for my learning purpose here. So in this one, we have created a public repository called Azure Serverless. Now say that you are a developer who is working on this project. What you do is, for the first step that you're gonna do is basically clone this repository. To clone the repository, you go to the server, and then you're gonna you're gonna copy the URL, right? So which will help you to clone it. So before I clone it in the VS Code, let me show you a few properties of the GitHub repository. So this is the repo. As you see here, that's where the code pane is showing you. This is your repository name, and in the button you see that whether your repository is public. Public means anybody in the internet can see it or read it. And then the private means it's only that you can read it, or access provided people can read it. Then in the branch, so we have talked about the branch. So it has a branch like a main branch for now. That's a only one branch, right? So tag is nothing but you do a metadata annotation on your the Azure on your GitHub repository. That's where the tags comes in picture, right? And then that's where we see that issues is nothing but the open the new changes or the bugs that you want to work on this particular source code. That's where those will be nominated here. Then the pull request is nothing but you made some changes. Now you want to promote that changes to a stable code called as a pull request. And the GitHub action is nothing but this is where we talk about, and we will see like GitHub action is nothing but it's a workflow automation tool, right? That is used for deployment, that is build and deployment purpose. Then the project, so you can also see more details about the project here. Then here's a wiki is there, security is there. Of course, the settings is only available for the admin of the repository only. So here is the setting and admin related activity can be seen here. Now with that knowledge, let me quickly take you to the the developer activity. So first of all, you're gonna copy the clone URL like this, and then VS Code. Consider that you have installed the VS Code. Now the first activity is to clone the repository. So to clone the repository, what you do is you're gonna copy paste that URL that you copied from the from the GitHub portal. Then click on a clone, and then this is the space where choose the right place where you can the store the repository. So here in my case, I am keeping my repository to a destinated folder. So I have created a folder structure something like this. So I want that my repository to sit in that folder. So you need to direct to a particular space in your workstation or in your laptop or desktop. And then once the clone gets completed, right? So cloning is only possible if inbound of HTTPS 443 is allowed. So it is allowed because this is my laptop that is has unrestricted access to the internet. Now I would see that my the repository got cloned, and currently by default it will sit in a default branch. So this is the default branch here, right? And then what you do is as part of the demo, what I do is I'm gonna create a new branch from main branch, right? So this is how I'm creating a branch. Remember that I'm not running any GitHub command here. I'm using the UI provided by the VS Code and trying to do my job. That is my developer job. So I will call it as a demo branch. Let me call it as a demo branch. And that's also, this is my demo branch. So what is this happening is, by doing this activity, you have taken a copy of your master branch, and let's call it as a feature branch. Now in this feature branch, you're gonna make the developer going to make some changes, right? So how do gonna make a changes? So that's what I'm gonna show you. So for now, you can add a new files, folders according to your need of the development. For now, I'm gonna change, or I'm gonna remove some space here because I don't want this one. So what I'm doing is I'm just editing the workflow file. That is, this is a GitHub action workflow file, by the way, and it's the same thing that you do it even for the other source code as well. So now what I do is I'm gonna save this. So I have saved this. All right, now next one is I'm gonna make some rational changes. So what I do is, as part of this just demo, I'm also going to make some the non-impacting changes, something like this, and save it. So once my changes are done for the feature, what I do is I'm going to go to the source control button. So I'm going to click on a source control button. You can ignore the other part and just focus on source control. In the source control, you see that there are changes. So changes here, when you click on a particular file, it will show you the changes. So in the sense, it will show you a side by side view. So those side by side views can be changed here according to your need. So in the left hand side, the page, the file, it will show you the previous version. The right hand side green part will show you the new changes that you have brought into that particular file, right? So here you can again validate and try to do a, once you are good with it, you can do a staging. So that's where the this activity of staging comes in picture handy. That's where you can validate the changes again. So I'm okay with the both the changes, so I did one by one changes, right? So that's what that's where the stages button comes in picture. So you can also do the unstage as well, and you can also revert the changes. That is according to your need. For now we did a staging, so then I have to commit it. So to commit it, I need to have a message. So I will call it as a demo, right? Or you can write it a decent message as well, and then do a commit. So once you do a commit, basically you do a publish. So why publish? Because this is the first time you have created a branch with using the VS Code in your local laptop. So you did publish the branch. But when you do a next time changes, say for example, I'm gonna remove that changes again back and try to save it. So once I do that, again it will go back and you go to the source control and follow the same stage. Okay, so here again you can validate the changes and do a, you see there is a button called stage all, or you can do reverse of that as well. Now put a put a command something like demo1 and do a commit again. So once you do a commit again, now you see that now it is coming a sync. So that's what I have walked you through in the PPT. Now we do a sync. So what is that sync? Is basically you're telling that hey, local git, I made these changes, sync these changes to the upstream. So basically whatever the source code that you see in your laptop is a downstream. The upstream is nothing but it's a server or the GitHub portal where your source code is syncing. So that's the reason you need to use a word called upstream and downstream. So now we go to the, now we are done our activity in the downstream. Now we go to the upstream, that is basically to the GitHub portal, and go to the compare and pull request. So this is the space where you're gonna do a pull request. So basically, as you see that we are doing a pull request between main branch and my this demo branch. And here you can add the title. So like a demo branch changes. So let me give that as a demo branch changes. And then here you can write a description. So you can always write a nice description so that reviewer can approve the changes. So with this, you will create a pull request. So what is a pull request? Is nothing but it is basically a task that will map the the feature branch changes against the the stable branch, and the somebody third party or basically a third person will come and review that changes. Once it is approved, then only the code goes to the main branch. So that's the reason I will see those changes. I basically the approver. So here I'm playing a role of both approval and the developer as well. So I would see the changes here and I'm okay with it. Then that's where I go to the conversation and merge the basically I will approve the pull request. So once I approve the pull request, what happens is the code that you made changes in the demo branch will be appearing in the main branch as well. So that is, if you switch to the, you see that there are two branches now. So let's go to the main branch. Now in the main branch and go to the GitHub Actions where we made the changes, and now that part will not have that code. So basically this is how a developer will be using the VS Code and making the code development life cycle activities. Right now, with that said, let's go to the GitHub Actions demo. So now once I have done the changes, now I can use the GitHub Actions and try to run the workflow. So to run the workflow, so here in this case I'm using the workflow dispatch, which means that running manually, right? So if I now for now what I do is I'm going to run it. While it is running, I'm going to show you what is the so basically here the trigger point of this particular the GitHub action workflow is manually. That's the reason it will call it as a workflow dispatch, and that's the reason when I run it, I have to choose a branch. So I can run it on a demo branch or main branch. I should run it from the main branch because that is the stable code which I wanted to test. So now when I run that, my GitHub action workflow is running. So when the GitHub action workflow is running, now you see that it is performing all those steps, right? So steps which are declared in the file, and now it seems to be it has gone green, which means that it has performed the activity on the source code that you have declared. So basically what happened under the hood is it has run those tasks. Basically it has run that job, and that job has a set of a task. So basically you have the steps. The steps is nothing but the task number 1, 2, 3, which will run in a it will only run in a serialized, not in a helter and skelter. Okay. Alright, so this is how basically you will use GitHub and GitHub Actions as a developer to maintain the version control of your source code when you are developing your applications. With that note, thank you very much for watching my videos. Kind request, please do subscribe my channel. That would really encourage me a lot. With that note, thank you. Thanks a lot and see you in the next video.